Hello everyone, Maurice and welcome to Tanks Invest. Talk about investing, finance, professional development. For today's video, every times only. The investment I'm going to talk about today will be Ethereum ticker ETH. First, just want to say good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are. As of this Saturday morning, and also happy Saturday to everybody around the world as well. With respect to Ethereum, it's currently trading around the $1862 level, down about 2.5% right now. So I'm recording around 6:42 a.m. on the Eastern time right now. So I woke up relatively earlier today. I woke up around like 6, so I don't know why. I just woke up naturally without really needing an alarm clock, even though it's a Saturday or a weekend. I should be sleeping in a little bit more. With respect to Ethereum, as I'm looking into the technical analysis, we are hovering around the level of identifications, per our technical analysis, that $1850 level. And today we actually hit that $1856.59. And we subsequently rebound from there. And it seems like we're just kind of hovering on a sideways fashion. And just to keep tabs on the media affectation perspective, looking at the news article that I've been reading for the last 45 minutes so far, ever since I woke up at 6, it's collectively overall more leaning towards the negative spectrum, I would say. With one of the biggest news, if you talk about the most macro perspective, is the Ethereum co-founder, Anthony Del Lorio, selling his Decentral and cuts major ties, to cryptocurrency, which is obviously a negative one. Another one is a foreshadow or some sort of a reinforcement with respect to a negative news that we've had with Thorchain tapping into the U.S. Treasury to subsequently get that repayment of the $5 million of Ethereum that was lost after the cyber attack. So it's kind of like foreshadow of some regulatory reinforcements going forward from the Fed or from the regulator going forward, and also obviously to remind us that cryptocurrency is still under a cyber attack and it's still a vulnerability that we need to be aware of, right? So let's just take a look at one of the more seismic news. I think with respect to Ethereum co-founder leaving, I think with respect to Anthony, there are multiple founders of Ethereum's assets, right? I'm just keeping tabs here, right? There's Vitalik Buterin, which is one of the, most famous or popular, known representative for Ethereum as a founder, right? There's also Galvin Wood, there's also Charles Hoskinson, and sorry for butchering their names, and Joseph Lubin, and many others, right? So how important is Anthony in the ecosystem, right? I think with respect to Ethereum as an asset as a whole already, it is already relatively scaled up, right? It is an animal by itself that it doesn't need a lot of hand-holding or reinventions, if you may, right? Obviously, one founder can be, detrimental into the team morale, obviously, right? Because any executive succession departure oftentimes can hinder the operational cadence within a company or within any value proposition that you try to build, right? But everybody have their life aspiration, right? Life is not all just about money. Life is not just about how much assets you could build. It's about how you want to spend your time, right? So we don't know who Anthony is as a person. I'm not a personal fan of his, so I don't know his personal aspiration or where he wants to go. But I think, with respect to how Ethereum has massively being adopted now and has grown exponentially or astronomically, if depending on what perspective you want to look at, it is about time that he might want to maybe take a step back, because he still has like maybe 4 or 5 partners that's next to him that can be sustaining the value proposition of Ethereum going forward as we are further innovating. So one departure isn't a huge detriment to the long-term vision that we try to aim at. So, but obviously this is a negative news, right? Because whenever you hear like a CEO leaving, if this CEO was really, really good, it's always a sad news. Obviously, will drive some selling pressure, but I wouldn't see this as like a detriment, right? So I wouldn't worry too much about in terms of like a macro or long-term perspective, because again, there's still like 5, 6 founders that are still on the team. He just taking a step back, probably serving as a chairman of or a board advisor or something like that. They're not completely detached ultimately, right? Businesses just don't work that way. It's ultimately a relationship business, right? And then with respect to the juxtaposition on negative news, we did hear some positive news. The most recently was with respect to Fidelity adding Ether onto the trading platform for hedge funds going forward. So obviously with more crypto assets adoptions across all the corporate investors, having that as part of the engine, if you may, would be extremely critical. So that's another stamp of approval from the more institutional investors going forward, right? And also to remind you guys with respect to Saquon Barkley, that I mentioned in my video yesterday, that he decided to accept all his future endorsements in Bitcoin, right? Obviously with a smart, talented athlete, such as Saquon Barkley for the New York Giants as a running back, him consulted with his financial advisors to decide to utilize a big chunk of his assets or his wealth going forward onto Bitcoin. Definitely has a lot of gravitas into the story, right? So definitely good story, but obviously some negative media affectation. So that's the reason why we are driving at the level that we're at right now. So I'm gonna go through a technical analysis to see how we're shaking out with respect to media affectation, and also the weekend affectation that we're currently experiencing right now, to how we see going forward ahead of the Monday meeting that Janet Yellen is gonna be talking about with all the regulators, and also with respect to on Wednesday, which is on the 21st, the summit that's happening going forward. So stay tuned, stick around, let's have some money. So moving on to the technical analysis for Ethereum ticker ETH, I'm recording at 6:52 a.m. on Eastern time. Current trading at the $1,860 level, down about 0.34% so far. So we're kind of hovering away, trading around on a sideways fashion, touching the consolidation level that we've identified so far at the $1,850 level, right? We're basically $10 above it, so I would call that we're pretty much on the dot right now. And with respect to how we trending going forward, knowing the fact that today's a Saturday, right, and we got some negative news, and people on the East Coast are still, starting to wake up, I guess, that I think it might be possible for us to see some selling pressure, a little bit more today, despite testing this level, right? But again, the $1,860 level is a very consolidated, substantive level that we've tested historically. If you look back, right, so we're touching that once, right? Touching that twice, 3 times, 4 times, and let's keep going back, keep going back, keep going back, keep going back, right? And a bunch of times here, right? And a bunch of times here, right? So 1860 is a pretty substantive level to dollar cost average if you would like to. And in addition to that, on a MACD perspective, we are slowly forming a curvature. So we are slowly forming the bottom right now, especially on the RSI perspective. You could see we are at the floor. We're literally on the floor right now. We are basically maybe 2 inches off of the ground, maybe. And when the ball hits the ground, which I will see is relatively soon, I don't think 1700 would be extremely depleted, because again, right, you have to go back all the way to the ground, and you have to go below the ground, below the soil, and possibly go all the way to the magma if you want to go to the 1750, right? In a supply and demand logic perspective, it will require a lot of people to sell on losses. But how likely is that? Do you want to be selling on a loss because we just because of the fact that we're selling? Yes, I know we have the negative news today with respect to the cyber attack, and also with respect to the the co-founder leaving the firm and selling cryptocurrencies, but how substantive of these news, right? Or do you think this is just another punch in the face, because it's a weekend affectation, so some selling pressure, so they try to rip off the bandage slowly to make you bleed and cause more type of fear mongering ahead of the summit, and then by Monday you see like a big pump, or by Tuesday, because Monday is kind of a binary factor right now. We have to understand the verbiage, the true verbiage. I really hope they will give a transcript on the meeting on that day to understand how the regulators are talking, and with respect to the key adjectives and key words that they use, right? And also want to look for like specific quantifiable numbers to see what is the plan going forward, right? Because that will give me a good gauge on how we can shake out the market going forward, right? So I look for like confirmatory type of adjectives, looking for substantive quantitative numbers to back up, and then formulate the prediction going forward. And that's how I typically calculate the forecast of the price, or for a company, or for an assets going forward, right? So during this weekend, we are, I think right now is a great level to buy in if you want to be. But again, right, the weekend affectation durates until sometimes around like 5:30 p.m. on the Eastern time later today. So possibly maybe touching 1800 would be unlikely, but possibly 1750 we might if we get another negative news, another punch in the face black swan news, right? But by then we'll be so depleted that the RSI will be so squeezed out that you will be below the earth, and that will be just a perfect opportunity to buy. So maybe putting some orders in, around like 17, or even like below 1800. I think that's very logical. And that will be a relatively good gains in the near term, especially ahead of the summit, especially ahead of the FOMC meeting on the 28th, and especially ahead of the London fork on August 4th as well. Well, for that anticipatory momentum that's building up going forward. All right, just to recap all the numbers in a technical analysis, with respect to the current level, the 1850, this is the level that we keep talking about, right? The consolidation level that is extremely attractive, right? Or the way I call it, steel, right? And this is the reason that we got here is because, again, the negative media affectation that we're having, and also the adjustments for the weekend affectation at the same time, right? But per our discussion in the technical analysis, we understand that with respect to RSI, we're pretty much depleted right now. The MACD, we are slowly forming a curvature, so the rebound should be happening relatively shortly. But obviously, it's going to be a volatile couple of weeks or a couple of days as well, right, with respect to the Monday for the meeting with the regulators, and then subsequently to summit, and then the FOMC meeting, and then the London fork. So hovering around the 1850, more potentially drop down to the 1750 could be possible, but do we see further than that? That would be unlikely because that will require to go below the supply and demand dynamics. That will form a huge outlier. That whenever you go against physics, or forming an outlier, if you may, you will just immediately bounce back up. Which for you to have that opportunity to capture that cost average at that low level will be relatively minimal, because by then people will just buy that up already. So something to look out for. Corporate adoption 20%, 9,800, 5 times your money from here. We buy at the 1916, but obviously higher now because of the fact that we're low at the 1850. Alright, so that's it for today. Respect my technical analysis on the Ethereum ticker ETH. I hope you guys have a great rest of the day. I'm actually spending some time with my family today. My sister actually got reservations at the small island. That's debut, I think, about a month and a half ago in New York City. So my sister actually got reservations and tickets for us to get there. So I'm interested and excited, I guess, to see how it goes. But yeah, I'm gonna be on my phone throughout the day. I have a relatively long day today, but feel free to reach out. I should be responding accordingly on my phone. So let me know how I can be helpful, and stay tuned for next coming up. Take care. Bye.